Hey there. So with the Thunderbolts movie being out now, I thought now would be a good time to look at this book here. So this is Thunderbolts #1 from Marvel Comics back in 1997. Now, while the movie isn't based on this version of the team, this is one that I really like, and I think this is a really good first issue. So I wanted to take the time now to take a look at this one. And so this is right around the era of Onslaught and the Heroes Reborn of the late '90s, where a lot of some of the Image guys came back to Marvel and took over some of their superhero books that weren't doing so well at the time. So I think it was like Captain America, Avengers, Iron Man, and Fantastic Four. And so all of those superheroes were in sort of like another pocket universe there for a while, so they weren't in the main Marvel universe at the time. And that's kind of what we're getting here at the beginning, is that a news report talking about what's gone on with Onslaught and different things and how the heroes are gone. I wasn't reading this as it was happening, so I can't remember. I think people thought the heroes were dead at the time, but they were just in another universe. But this is sort of the concept here is sort of like a new superhero team is coming in to kind of fill the void left by the heroes who are gone now. We have this news reporter telling, what's kind of happened and sort of the fallout from this big attack with Onslaught and everything. And here we have the title of the issue, Justice, and all this text. And then when we turn the page, we see Like Lightning. So that is the entire title for this story, for this issue. I think it's interesting, we've got like 2 pages before we get the entire title here, which I don't think I've seen that done in a comic before. I think maybe on the next page, but yeah, this is, sort of a splash panel that reads like this, so I guess technically it's the second page. But I think it's interesting seeing the way they just broke up the title like that. I can't think I've seen that done before anywhere else. But yeah, so here we have our team of creators for the book. So we've got Kurt Busiek and Mark Bagley, and then Vince Russell as inker here. And again, I'm a big fan of Busiek and Bagley's Avengers run that was, I'm trying to think, came after this, I think, if I'm remembering that right. Because they took on Avengers in the Heroes Return era, so it'd be after Heroes Reborn and all this. But yeah, probably my favorite run of Avengers. But here, we've got a lot of exposition here, sort of seeing the fallout in the city from this fight. We've got a girl here getting kidnapped, and no one kind of notices with everything going on. But here we have the news kind of reporting on, all our heroes are gone, but we still have all these villains we're dealing with, that are out there. We've got Blastar and the Frightful Four, and then they mentioned the Masters of Evil here, and they're noting that the Masters of Evil attacked the Avengers Mansion recently, and so the populace is still kind of scared of them. And then we see there's this group kind of going through the rubble. They're called the Rat Pack, and they're sort of like professional looters. So again, this is still, 90s, everyone still kind of remembers the Rodney King riots out in LA at the time and sort of looting that was going on back then. So then these guys are going through, kind of scavenging what they can, stealing from people and off of bodies and stuff like that. And then we see this character here, Citizen V, show up to stop them. And then we have our big splash page here of the rest of the Thunderbolts, which is, the team he's with, and kind of showing up here to stop the bad guys. So then we get, an intro to the main, characters here of the book, and we get this sort of a, big fight scene here where we're kind of seeing their different powers and how they're dealing with these looters. And then, we've got everybody's sort of powers and abilities being featured here. We've got Mach 1 is this character getting shot down, but then Songbird, she can create this sort of force field to save him there. And then we have Atlas, who's like, grows to giant size here. Kind of, he's got some of the guys in his hand there. And then we have Citizen V approaching their leader, asking for him to surrender. And then the leader of the Rat Pack yells for his guys to retreat, and they run off in these little tunnels they've got dug, and that, you know, kind of blow up behind him so the Thunderbolts can't chase them. So then we've got Thunderbolts retire to their hideout here, which is this old, like, abandoned building in the neighborhood, apparently. And they're kind of talking about what they're going to do. You know, there's other supervillain hideouts they could take, you know, that are abandoned around the city, but they're just kind of sticking here. And, you know, we get a little bit of, not so much backstory, but more just like how the characters kind of interact with each other. Got Techno here kind of just relaxing. He's got this little robot that's bringing him a beer. And Meteorite here says, you know, they're not going to be sticking around here. They've got news reporters showing up. And so, oh, yeah, so here we've got a big two-page ad here for American Entertainment. This was a big mail order service back in the 90s. There were a couple of these where you could order comics from. I did it a couple times. You know, it wasn't a thing I used regularly, you know, because I had local comic shops where I lived. But if you didn't, you know, this is probably a pretty good deal. So then we have the Thunderbolts going outside and having sort of a, you know, impromptu press conference here where Citizen V says that he is the grandson of the Golden Age hero Citizen V. And so here he introduces the rest of the team to the media here. So again, we've got Techno, Mach 1, Songbird, Atlas, and Meteorite. And so the press is, you know, asking if they're here to replace the heroes who've been lost, and they're saying, you know, we're not replacing them, we're just trying to do our part. And, you know, that's why they're calling themselves the Thunderbolts and not like, you know, a new version of the Avengers or anything like that. And while the press conference is going on, they hear like, oh, the Rat Pack has showed back up. And so they're like, you know, to the V-Wing, which I guess is their ship. And so they're, or it looks more just like a flying wing sort of device here. And so here we find the Rat Pack again. And now they're kind of taking off as the Thunderbolts show up. So, you know, they're afraid this might be like an ambush. They're flying by these office buildings and things. And then we see this woman here that works for the mayor getting a call saying that the Avengers were, you know, like a federal government associated team. He wants the Thunderbolts to be tied to the city of New York now that they, you know, they've lost all these heroes. But so here the Thunderbolts are going after the Rat Pack, and they get sort of ambushed here by the Wrecking Crew. So yeah, just sort of like a, you know, standard sort of supervillain team in Marvel. I do like seeing the Wrecking Crew when they show up. I think there's a lot of good potential here for these characters. I kind of wish they'd be in a movie at some point. Marvel's done so many different characters in their movies. I feel like maybe some of them were on the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. TV show. It's been a while since I watched that. I can't really remember, but I feel like we had some version of them on there. But I would still like to see like a nice big budget version of the Wrecking Crew someday. So then, you know, we've got this big fight outside the Statue of Liberty here with the Thunderbolts and the Wrecking Crew. And, you know, kind of introducing everybody. You know, we see Atlas just sort of pounding some of the guys. But again, the Wrecking Crew, you know, they're maybe considered like a B or C level team. But, you know, they do have some interesting powers. And, you know, they are kind of powerful. And I'm trying to think where... Oh, yeah. So back here, just real quick, I forgot to mention this. So we see Techno here saying the Wrecking Crew, but we can't fight them there. And then Citizen V kind of cuts them off. And so we're not sure what Techno means right here. Is like, why can't they fight the Wrecking Crew? Are they too powerful? You know, we're not really sure what he meant by that. But, you know, over the course of the battle, the arm gets knocked off the Statue of Liberty. And finally, Mach 1 shoots these sort of pellets into the mouths of the Wrecking Crew, which unleashes like a knockout gas on them. And then Songbird uses her powers to kind of create these spheres to keep the gas in and knock out the Wrecking Crew. And then Bulldozer's kind of the last one standing, and he says, you know, my mouth is shield, that won't work on me. So Atlas just grows and kind of steps on him there to stop him. And we see Atlas kind of getting a little aggressive here, like sort of freaking out a little bit. But that stops pretty quick. The Thunderbolts kind of help with the cleanup. They repair the arm of the Statue of Liberty here. and they've got really good sort of public opinion based on this new super team. And we're seeing here, like, street vendors are selling bootleg Thunderbolts gear already. And then we've got, the obligatory Spider-Man cameo in the first issue of a Marvel book, where Spider-Man says they're all right with them. We see the New Warriors here, again, a book that Mark Bagley previously worked on, kind of giving their opinion of the team and everybody. And then the reporters on the street ask the Black Widow what she thinks. And so here we're back home with the Thunderbolts here. We're trying, they're kind of watching the news here, seeing what everybody's saying. And then here comes Citizen V without his mask, and he's just horribly scarred like this. And he's like, well, here, I'll put on my older mask. And that's when we see that Citizen V is really Baron Zemo, and that the rest of the team is the Masters of Evil. So Citizen V is really Baron Zemo. Techno is the Fixer. Mach 1 is Beetle. Songbird is Screaming Mimi. Atlas is Goliath. And then Meteorite is Moonstone. So yeah, this was a really big twist back in the day. Nobody saw this coming. This is early days of the internet. Nowadays, if you had done this, this would have been spoiled months before it came out. I think that's probably also a big reason why they're not doing this version of the team in the movie. I don't think you could pull this off in a movie. These things are too big budget. There's too many people working. There's too much of an industry around spoilers and what's happening with these movies these days to keep something like this secret, and have a big reveal in the film like that. But here, early days of internet and just sort of the fan press at the time, wasn't that big, certainly not as big as it is on the internet now, and with social media and everything. So yeah, nobody knew this was the twist in this book until it hit the shelves and people read it. There were advertisements for this book coming out, of course, and there was articles in Wizard and things, but it just looked like, oh, here's a new superhero team. Looks okay, probably won't be great. No one was really expecting too much from this book, but this twist here was really big in the, back in the day when this happened. And again, I don't even know if you could pull this off in a comic book today without it leaking, especially for a book from the big two. But yeah, really, it kind of, again, this wasn't a book I was going to pick up. I didn't buy this when it first came out. But, once I kind of started hearing the twist, I thought, oh, that's really cool. That's a neat idea. And it's, it's established villains that nobody was really doing anything with at the time. And so that's kind of what, Thunderbolts started out being, was, this book of these villains who were posing as superheroes. And yeah, just a really cool novel idea at the time. Again, don't think you could do that in a movie. But yeah, just a really fun twist. Really, really interesting idea. And they did kind of run with that over the course of the series, where some of the villains want to be heroes at a certain point. Whatever their scheme is here. Some of them like being the good guys. And, in this issue, people are cheering for them. And that's something some of them come to like. So yeah, just a really interesting first issue. Great twist. A really good first issue that really kind of grabs you. That's kind of what a first issue needs to do. It was tying into, a bigger story with Onslaught and Heroes Reborn and all that kind of stuff. So it was something, it really just looked like, oh, Marvel's just putting out another book to kind of cash in with all that, crossover stuff going on. But yeah, they came up with something really unique here that I think is really good. And I don't know if you can duplicate that again. So yeah, really like this first issue. I think this is just a good example of the way to introduce a series and, new characters, but, new characters that turn out to be old characters. Yeah, so have you ever read Thunderbolts? What do you think of the series? I haven't read the rest of the series yet, but that's something I'm going to get around to doing. But yeah, let me know in the comments below what you think of this. And thanks for watching. If you'd like to follow me on social media, I'm on Twitter/X @Detective651, also on Instagram @Detective651. Be sure to check out my t-shirt store at tpublic.com/user/Detective651. I've got a lot of nerdy designs on there, and there's sales all the time, so check it out frequently.